Hello there, coming to you live from the capital Jakarta, Indonesia. You are watching Special Report here on TVRI World. For the next 30 minutes, we'll bring you the latest developments from Middle East in the aftermath of the Israelis' strikes on the capital of Qatar, the city of Doha, and just recently the city of Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, taking lives upon lives. And we'll bring you details on that, on the extensions of Israelis' campaign in Middle East towards the Gulf states. And today's on Special Reports on TVRI World, we are joined by researchers from the Department of International Relations of CSIS. We have Muhammad Wafak Karisma joining me. Thank you very much for your time. As well, always a pleasure to have you here.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And in the meantime, let's start our program with a couple of news before we start our conversations. Well, Israel's deadly attack on Hamas in Qatar draws global condemnation as world leaders from Europe, Asia, and Asia Pacific describe the attack as a gross violation of international law and the UN Charter.
Indonesia strongly condemned Israel's recent strike targeting Hamas in Doha, Qatar, calling it a flagrant breach of international law and a grave threat to regional peace and security. A statement posted Tuesday on X, the Indonesian Foreign Ministry urged the United Nations Security Council to take immediate and decisive measures to halt Israel's military aggression in Gaza and ensure accountability. Indonesia condemns this aggression and repeats its calls on the United Nations Security Council to fulfill its mandate by taking immediate and decisive measures to halt Israel's actions and ensure accountability, the statement said. Israel struck the headquarters of Hamas's political leadership in Qatar on Tuesday as the group's top figures gathered to consider a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The strike on the territory of a U.S. ally marked a stunning escalation and risked upending talks aimed at winding down the war and freeing hostages. The attack angered Qatar, an energy-rich Gulf nation hosting thousands of American troops, that has served as a key mediator between Israel and Hamas throughout the 23-month-old war and even before. It condemned what it referred to as a flagrant violation of all international laws and norms as smoke rose over its capital, Doha. Other key U.S. allies in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, promised their support to Qatar. Hamas said in a statement its top leaders survived the strike, but that 5 lower-level members were killed, including the son of Khalil al-Hayya, Hamas's leader for Gaza, and its top negotiator, 3 bodyguards, and the head of al-Hayya's office. Hamas, which has sometimes only confirmed the assassination of its leaders months later, offered no immediate proof that al-Hayya and other senior figures had survived. The Qatari authorities strongly condemned Israel's strikes on residential buildings in Doha, the Qatari Foreign Ministry said. Qatar does not intend to tolerate Israel's actions, which threaten the security of the entire region. Leaders around the world strongly condemned the Israel's attack. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim wrote on X that he condemns in the strongest possible terms the Israeli strike, calling it a wanton act of aggression that violates international law. He said Malaysia stands in full solidarity with Qatar and that Israel had shown utter contempt for peace and diplomacy. The UK, France, Germany, Australia and New Zealand have also condemned Israel's airstrikes on Doha. French President Emmanuel Macron said on X they were unacceptable regardless of motive and added that the war must not be allowed to spread in the region. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the attack risks further escalation in the volatile region. The governments in Moscow and Beijing have both condemned Israel's deadly attack on Hamas negotiators in Doha. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi warned in a news conference that the attack hinders diplomatic efforts, voiced support for Qatar, and urged Israel to return to the negotiating table.
Israel's strikes on Qatar drawn massive global condemnation, with leaders and senior officials of multiple countries saying that the move seriously violated international laws and threatened regional security and stability.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said the kingdom rejected and condemned Israel's assaults in the region, the latest being Tuesday's attack on Doha. Saudi Crown Prince said in a televised address, the brutal aggression against the sisterly state of Qatar requires Arab, Islamic and international action. And Israel launched an unprecedented airstrike in a residential neighborhood of the Qatari capital of Doha on Tuesday in what Israeli authorities described as an attempt to assassinate leaders of Hamas. In a joint statement, Israel's military and its Shin Bet security agency confirmed responsibility for the strike on the building, saying the strike targeted Hamas leaders directly responsible for the October 7 massacre and used precise munitions and intelligence to limit civilian harm. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a wholly independent Israeli operation. Qatari Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani described the Israel attack as state terrorism.
Let's go talk to our guest on the show. Today we have Muhammad Wafa Karisma. Wafa, I've mentioned this at the beginning that Israel carried out a strike on senior Hamas leaders in the capitals of Qatar, the city of Doha, on Tuesday afternoon, killing 5 people, as also acknowledged by the Hamas. Do you think that this attack would further worsen the already dire situations and security and stability in the region?
I think so. I think it'll be really bad for the region, because it's unprecedented. It breaks away from the previous patterns of rivalry. Qatar is a relatively neutral state who's been active in acting as a mediator for the Hamas side, has been a crucial partner for the U.S. for so long. They hosted the largest U.S. base in the region, right? And they still get to strike, right? So I think we're seeing an unfolding of a new regional order where strength and might dictates, and then there's a undermining, active undermining of international law via the genocide, the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And then we're also seeing an expansionist ambition of Israel seeking to conduct hegemonic behavior, right? If you looked at one of the statements from Benjamin Netanyahu, he compares his actions towards that of the U.S. when U.S. was chasing Al-Qaeda all the way, in Afghanistan, and of course, chasing Osama bin Laden all the way to Pakistan. That's what he was citing was hegemonic country, right?
To justify their
actions, right? And I'm not trying to reify what his talking points are, but just suggesting that this is what their ambitions are. And how do we deal with such a country? Who can? That's the big question, right? And it's also testing the capacity of the countries there, the regional countries, the Gulf countries, leadership there. That's why one of the first things that we see is different leaders coming in to Qatar, visiting to show support, not just by statements but also by visits. To show support, and I think that's the very least that they can do. There are some diplomatic measures that you can do together. I don't know if they're thinking about a sort of strength retaliation. That's something that would escalate a lot of different dynamics. But yeah, it's been bad for the negotiation itself, right?
Yeah. So before we go to that, Mustafa, you know that the attack occurred when Hamas leaders were discussing the latest ceasefire proposals put forward by the U.S. in Doha. How would the attack, I mean, you mentioned that a little bit on the ongoing negotiations, will affect the ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas, which has been put on the table by the U.S., supported by Qatar, but now Doha is attacked by the Israelis.
Yeah, now the questions will fall to, of course, not just Israel, but also to the future of Qatari role in mediating. Yeah. I think I know that the report they're suspending their mediator role. Yeah. They have suspended before, but that was because to react to one of the party not moving forward, right? Yeah. This time they suspend their role because they were being attacked. Yeah. Right. They're
a sovereign nation at that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a Qatari official was also killed in the bombing. I saw the report on that. Yeah. So the future of a Qatari mediating role would be damaged. Second is, of course, the future of the U.S. role, because Qatar is just a partner of the U.S., but also, judging from what you said, it's only been, if you're judging by Trump's Truth Social post and other reports, right? Yeah. It's only been 3-4 days from the latest U.S. proposal that comes to Hamas. And so they were negotiating in the past 2-3 days. I know that there's some differences, nuances. Of course, the Hamas side will always emphasize on permanent ceasefire. Yeah. It's just that I think in the latest U.S. idea, is they're trying to press Hamas to settle for not the permanent ceasefire, but a negotiation towards ceasefire. So just to start this negotiation process of talking about disarmament and so on and so forth, creating an independent body in Gaza.
And releasing hostages. That's been
exactly.
Also one of
so there's a bit of a movement there that Hamas considers, and then the attack happens, right? Whatever is going to happen from now on to the negotiation is going to be difficult to say.
Right. I guess at some point we've seen also reports that Hamas has looked at all the points of ceasefire proposals, and they can see themselves agreeing to some of them, as opposed to what the Israeli counterparts have been saying, that we have not yet put out any stance in regards to the ceasefire proposals. But now the strike has happened towards a sovereign country, a mediator at that. What do you think will happen if there's no more efforts being given to the discussion, to the negotiations of ceasefires, when, as you said, Qatari has suspended their participations, U.S. is about to do the same, and these two rivalries, Hamas and Israel, are not seeing each other eye to eye?
I don't want to say this, but the worst case scenario would be one-state solution becoming true. So no more two-state solution except for the discussions between leaders like France and UK and probably Australia joining in. Plus the already people in countries like Indonesia, of course, who have long supported two-state solution. Exactly. It'll just be in documents, not in territorial, rigidity of a sovereign nation in a strict, territory. It'll be really difficult, right? I think right now we're seeing from different ministers in Israel, they're demanding maximal sovereignty and minimal population, Arab population. This was said by, of course, Finance Minister, for example, Smotrich. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu is accommodating this type of views, including himself is accommodating these types of views. So the worst case scenario would be just spreading of, expansion of the ground forces. They've already thrown the flyers above the 1 million Palestinians in Gaza City, asking them to move south in a really small strip of land they called refugee, sort of a refugee camp, where it's not even a safe zone, because I think a few weeks ago there were kids, being involved waiting for water, and it's not really a safe zone. So they're trying to cramp the population. We're also seeing, expansion in the West Bank, right? Because of there's an unfortunate incident of, attack claimed by Hamas, but from Palestinians from villages in West Bank and Israel, killing several, I think, Israeli citizens, and they're trying to overcompensate for that, sort of by taking some revenge to the villages of these. So there's expansions in these two areas. who knows what type of expansions to the other countries, like Qatar, who host Hamas leaders, and they will chase those people as well, without the checks of strong countries like the U.S. If the U.S. does nothing, this will happen.
Right. Well, on the note of the U.S. again, I mean, you spoke about this a little bit before, that in the Truth Social and other social media platforms, and also he spoke to journalists just recently. President Donald Trump said he knew about the attack, but he could not stop it. And he said that the U.S. had no part in the decisions of Israel to attack Qatar. But he said it is purely the decisions of PM Benjamin Netanyahu. But then he also said, which is very important, that the U.S. is unhappy about this attack, which is a rare occasion of when we see that the U.S. is mildly or obviously disagreeing with what Israel had done. What's your take on this?
I think, of course, you can only guess, because from the words and statements, I think judging from how close they are working together.
The U.S. has always been the sole ally, if not the strongest, to Israel.
And when Trump ascends to his place now as a president, they've been working closely to Benjamin Netanyahu. So the fact that they don't know is questionable. So so I'm suspecting that they know. The question will be whether they cannot do anything, or they wouldn't pressure.
I guess the reports that's been going around, Mustafa, is that the U.S. knew about this attack. They actually informed the Qatari people, the Qatari authority, on the attack, but it was 10 minutes late, the Qatari said. So either they postponed their informations, they let it happen, even though they said they have no part in it. So.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that would be necessary to sort of set a distance from the behavior, right? You don't want to get being lumped together by the sort of aggressive behavior that was condemned, right? It'll be difficult to know to do that. But of course, as a close ally, they have a part, direct or indirectly, right? You can. I've told you this before about the White House. A spokesperson suggests that the attack was unfortunate but worthy goals, because so it sort of fits with the pattern of from Trump. That is just about maximizing pressure on the other side, on the Hamas side, to agree to whatever deal that they're bringing. So maximum pressure. So that's why it's. I get the feeling that they know and they just let it happen. No.
Right. So let's move on to another report before we continue on our conversations. Israel launched airstrikes on several sites across Yemen's capital, Sana'a, and Al-Jauf province in the north, both Houthi-held areas on Wednesday afternoon. Take a look.
The Israeli military confirmed in a statement that its targets included military camps, the Houthi military's public relations headquarters, and a fuel storage facility. It said the strikes were in response to drone and missile attacks on Israel by the Yemeni group. The Houthi-run health ministry said late on Wednesday that 35 people were killed and 131 others wounded in the airstrikes on Sana'a and in Al-Jauf. The ministry said most of the casualties were in the capital Sana'a, where 28 people were killed and 113 injured, many of them journalists. In Al-Jauf Governorate, 7 people described by the ministry as civilian employees were killed and 18 wounded. It said the toll was likely to rise as rescue teams search the rubble. The Houthi-run Al-Masirah TV reported that the Israeli attack targeted a medical facility run by the Houthi-controlled Yemeni oil company in Al-Sitan Street in the southwest of Sana'a.
Well, obviously, they're after the Houthis as an addition to, they go after the Hezbollah and also the Hamas in Gaza. But in Qatar, there's no such organizations that is opposed, the oppositions of Israel's, aside from the fact that they're targeting the Hamas leaders. So why do you think that it's okay for them to make a decision to attack a sovereign country in pursuit of the Hamas leaders?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, because I think the attack on Qatar break preceding patterns, right?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate as well, the attack on Yemen, but it's part of a pattern of tensions between parties who have opposed Israel and who have engaged in armed conflict with it. Qatar is a different country. So I think this is like I said, it's an unraveling of the U.S.-led order in the region, right? It has always been based on U.S. role as a security guarantor, plus the sort of alliances with key countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, part of it. Now one of the key U.S. ally, Qatar, is being attacked by another key U.S. ally. If U.S. doesn't do anything, or simply to sit back and then see what the consequences of the attacks are, I think
that is a bad optics for the U.S.
I think it's a bad optics for the U.S. and there's going to be questions about the longevity. And of course, Qatar will also, in the back of their minds, maybe not now, maybe in the future generation of their leaders, they will have to diversify the relationship. If they bet on the U.S., the U.S. is not even doing anything to prevent the attack, merely the 10-minute late warning. Then of course they will, as a sort of independent country, they will have to seek their options. They will have to recalculate.
And Israel would just be spreading out seeds of hate towards themselves by attacking all of these other non-opposing nations, just sporadically. But on that note, Wafa, almost all nations in the world, including Indonesia, condemned the Israeli attack. But it is unlikely that the global condemnations towards the Israeli will do anything to the change of their stance. On that note, we had the United Nations Security Council's rulings that have been largely ignored by Israel's, and we have the UN vetoes. So what's the next step here for not only the ceasefire, but to stop these aggressions in the region on behalf of all of these nations that have put forward their condemnations and their global call for the ceasefire?
Right. I think from my perspective, there's a lack of consequences to Israel's behavior, right?
Yeah, and they've been acting with impunity.
Impunity, exactly. I don't know if Qatar is going to retaliate or going to do something, at least diplomatically, say, for example, expulse, Israel from any diplomatic relationship, cut off diplomatic relationship as a grouping with Arab League, with the Gulf, with the GCC. The Gulf countries just collectively cutting diplomatic relationship with Israel. That could be done. Sanctions as well, and of course other countries can join that as well. But in terms of like punishment, it's going to be difficult, and I hate to say this because we're supposed to live in a rule-based society and of course
upholding international law.
But the Israel side has been suggesting that the language that they cannot accept is not negotiation, it's not economic relations, it's force. So I'm not going to be surprised when in the back of the minds of these countries in the Gulf countries will be deterring how to deter further attack. That means military. That means military, at least at the very least, defense. Or at the very least, a potential retaliatory strikes, right? Just to add that capacity. That seems to be the only guarantee. Right?
Because at this point we have Gulf states, Saudi Arabia has expressed their support and support for Qatar and condemnation for Israel on the attacks. So how do you think that the Gulf countries will come together instead of, you said that they may have to resort to the military options, at least for defense, but now they are being arbitrarily attacked by Israel in the regions that has no history of conflicts with Israel. So what will the Gulf states do at this point in time?
Yeah, there's going to be different spectrums of what countries will do, right? At the very minimal, I think if you're restricted in terms of capacity, so you cannot do anything, of course you have to pick this safe option. That means then just keeping a safe hand, not hosting any Hamas officials, then just sort of doing what the hegemon is asking. The hegemon being Israel, right? Others will be a bit more robust in their response. The defense response would be that one in terms of bringing up military capacity in retaliating or even with defense against missiles, right? And the other one would be probably more countries who will have a bit of a more urgent desire, and that would be probably countries like Turkey, who's also, in the region, they'll be a bit more adamant to have a stronger response.
And this is also something that the U.S. will be paying close attention to because they have their bases in this Arab countries, in the Gulf countries. Do you think that this will affect their presence, the U.S. military bases presence in these countries in response to this attacks to the Gulf state?
I think the U.S. will attempt to, like I said, they try to put a distance, right? Yeah. So the defense relationship would stay, right? But the thing is, it's not just defense, right? Your hegemonic or your support on the order is not just based on defense relations. It needs to be diplomatic presence. It needs to be assurances of your partners, right? If you're not even saying anything or not pressuring the other side that's attacking your partner, then it's just going to be on paper, just on military basis, on numbers, number of help, number of aid, number of tanks, number of jets. That's
so at this point, we're just going to have to see what sort of actions or words that will be coming from the U.S. in regard to these actions. I have to thank you, researcher of Department of International Relations of CSIS, Muhammad Wafa Karisma. Thank you for the insights and the time for TVR World.
Thank you.
And that concludes our program for the special reports here on TVR World from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm Rahmat Idris. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.